and today we're covering a 2015 American thriller movie called The Sand. The starting scene flips off at a serene beach which hosts the silence after a wild party from last night. The camera then shows us a guy who's covering the whole wild teenage party. He walks up to a girl named Kaylee and offers her a drink. She refuses, but once she spots her ex-boyfriend Jonah with his new girlfriend, she accepts the drink and chugs on it. Meanwhile, the party brews on as the organizer named Mitch takes away everyone's phones as per the Vegas rules. During the whole time, the guys and gals enjoy themselves. Later, a guy named Gilbert and his friend Vance carry a huge, slimy rock to the fire and place the heavy thing on the ground. Multiple scenarios play side by side where Mitch takes Kaylee aside. Meanwhile, Gilbert gets drunk and gets his face vandalized. As the sun rises up, Kaylee is the first one to wake up in Mitch's arms. She gets out of the guardroom and catches Jonah waking up in his car. As he tries to get out, his girlfriend named Chanda pulls him back inside and they proceed to have romance while the couple on the backseat also intermingle with each other. As Kaylee stands up the dock, she scans the beach and finds discarded clothing around the sand while no one else is to be seen there. In the interim, the guys wake up a topless girl named Marcia as she lay asleep on the bench. She wakes up groggily and starts to vomit. The people in the car recline with disgust. Meanwhile, Kaylee suddenly notices the bird disappearing under the sand. Suddenly, Marcia steps in the sand despite Kaylee's warning. Her feet get stuck and she's eventually pulled towards it under intense agony. As she screams for help, Vance also jumps out of the car and runs to her rescue but falls flat in the sand and goes immobile as well. As everyone watches in horror, his face gets torn apart by something and he eventually vanishes under the ground as well. Due to the sudden tragedy, Vance's girlfriend Ronnie starts crying and all of the people break into an argument. To conclude the discussion, Kaylee walks to the edge and hovers her hand above the sand which erects some tiny tentacles from the ground. In the meantime, Gilbert wakes up and finds himself stuck in a drum. He struggles to get loose but all his friends warn him about the fanatical force under the sand. To console him, Mitch illustrates a false hope for him to wait till the tide rises. Afterwards, Kaylee confronts him about it over a bottle of vodka and Mitch states it's better to give Gilbert some hope before he dies. Kaylee sighs in agreement and the time passes on. The group from the car keeps shifting their places in order to pass the time. Meanwhile, Gilbert gets nauseous from the strain and the difficulty, not to mention the heat of the sun. During the hours, Kaylee discusses the last night with Mitch. They both talk about what happened before the sand got them. As they ponder, Mitch finds a sunblock and Kaylee runs outside to help everybody with it. She throws it towards Jonah and as he applies it on Chanda's back, they discuss all the possibilities from the last night. The analogy dawns a fact on them that all of their fellows have been engulfed by the sand. Tears break from their eyes as they let reality consume them. Gilbert also gets frustrated and Jonah throws him the sunblock to calm him down. Just then, Kaylee notices the huge rock hatched open. It's now revealed that the slimy thing was actually an egg, which is now causing all the devastation. Upon the revelation, Ronnie refuses to believe in monsters. In order to test if the thing is actually alive, Kaylee arrives with hot dogs and throws it on the sand. As soon as it falls on the ground, everyone witnesses the hot dog to be engulfed by the hairy strands. Gilbert laments as they're wasting the food and asks for one hot dog but loses his appetite as a bird gets disemboweled in front of him. The incident makes him hysterical while Mitch throws one hot dog in a separate direction and luckily, it doesn't get eaten away. That spreads a sigh of relief and joy in them as it's confirmed now that the creature hasn't spread everywhere. In the meantime, Ronnie discusses that nobody is going to look for them and they're all by themselves. The argument puts Jonah into action mode and he gets forward to use the surfboard to get to the safer area. The girls try to stop him but he stays adamant on his choice and successfully places the boards on the sand. Afterwards, he manages to walk on them without getting harmed, but an emotional argument breaks out between Kaylee and Jonah. They discuss how everyone is befitting their own benefits. After the squabble, Jonah turns to climb on the wooden bench table but his board slides back. He now gets in real struggle as he tussles to hold on to the bench without falling in the sand. Intermediately, the strands erupt from the surface and lunge at his abs. He screams in agony while Kaylee bursts into tears. Nevertheless, he manages to climb on the bench table but it's revealed that his stomach is brutally blistered. Due to the excruciating pain, he lies down and goes limp. His friends begin to cry and grieve, but Jonah wakes up again, to everyone's relief. Despite the pain, he gets up and opens a bag of supplies. Inside, he finds a banana which he uses to trace the surface of the sand. As no strand picks on it, he jumps on the ground and stays safe. Therefore, he takes a bite of banana, but suddenly, his stomach wounds turn into blisters filled with pus. Jonah starts vomiting and Kaylee guides him back to the table. Upon reaching the top, he finds soda cans and water bottles which he throws to everyone. The girls take a chug as well as Gilbert, who heaves a sigh of gratitude as a water bottle drops into his hands. Furthermore, Mitch propels a failed attempt to catch the thrown can, and due to his act, the guard railing gets loose with the bolts. Unfortunately, in the meantime, Jonah's condition worsens as his wounds now start to squirt blood. Due to the dreadful agony, he crawls to the table and slowly lies down while Kaylee and Chanda start crying as their beloved boy drowns in pain. On the other hand, Gilbert suggests calling somebody via phones. Upon that, Mitch reveals that they're in the trunk, and in order to get them, Ronnie volunteers. She manages to climb on the rear bumper while Chanda holds her hand in order to not let her fall down. Ronnie struggles to open the trunk, but it hits her shins and she can't open it. As an innovative idea, Kaylee brings in the rescue hook so Ronnie can lean back. Using this specific technique and through a strenuous effort, she manages to open the trunk successfully, but just then, a rescue car arrives on the beach which diverts Ronnie's attention. She slips her foot and the trunk closes on her fingers. She bellows in agony as her fingers are now crushed in the crevice. In the meantime, the warden parks right in front of them, and both Mitch and Kaylee request him for help and backup. Furthermore, they warn him about the dangers of the sand, but the warden walks out unaffected. He strolls over to Jonah and ponders over the disgusting mess. Still unaffected, he walks over to Gilbert and makes fun of him. After going through Ronnie and Chanda, the warden steps towards the lodging where Mitch notices that his shoes are protecting him from the hairy strands. As the warden reaches them, they try to tell him about everything, but he refuses to believe them. During the talk, his keys fall on the sand, and just as he gets down to pick it up, the strands get him as well. For his defense, Kaylee projects him to use the pepper spray. The spray manages to loosen the strands, but the warden's arm gets amputated brutally. His screams ring around as he falls down with the pain and eventually gets engulfed as well, while Kaylee silently brings back the pepper spray. After this incident, Mitch proposes that he can walk to the safer area by wrapping his feet with the towel. Despite their reservations, the girls allow him, and Chanda throws the towel to Mitch as he stands on the edge of the railing. Unfortunately, the second throw causes him to lose his own balance and the guard railing breaks. Mitch tumbles down into the sand where the strands slowly pierce his body, and everyone watches in sheer terror as their friend gets shredded to pieces. Following the turmoil, Kaylee gathers her strength and calls Chanda to grab the railings. She climbs on the hood and receives the wooden posts as Kaylee breaks them and hands them to Chanda. Afterwards, Kaylee climbs to the edge and jumps into the car. Upon getting up, she lands a hard punch on Chanda's face for screwing her boyfriend. As the girls settle, Gilbert enjoys the scene despite the tension. In the meantime, Kaylee brings some hope for Jonah and requests Gilbert to turn around and focus on them. As he struggles to turn in his drum, Kaylee and Chanda scuffle to wrench Ronnie's hand free from the closed trunk. With one strong shove, they pull her hand out and wrap her fingers in the towel, while she whimpers due to the overwhelming pain. Nevertheless, they all continue their arduous effort to gain some stability. Kaylee then urges Chanda to go forward and proceed toward Jonah by using the handrails and placing them in the sand. Chanda does so and walks over them skillfully towards Jonah's table. In the interim, Gilbert gets his belly scraped against the metal and his blood trickles down on the surface. Meanwhile, Chanda reaches the table, but Jonah calls for Kaylee instead. Following his wish, she carefully walks on the tip of the posts and falls into Jonah's arm, where they both claim their love for each other once again. At the end of them all, Ronnie starts her walk, but due to her injured hand, she loses her balance and falls on the sand. Amidst her screams, Kaylee uses the pepper spray, which helps her stay safe, but it only lasts a moment before Ronnie disappears beneath the engulfing sand as well. The tragic end brings tears to the girls' eyes. On the other hand, the strands start reaching for Gilbert's blood across the barrel. During the course of time, Chanda gets courageous and uses Mitch's towel technique. Luckily, she makes it to the rescue car and stands triumphant over the SUV. Unfortunately, The bad luck looms over them once again and the ground starts shaking. Suddenly, massive tentacles erupt in Gilbert's barrel and they snuck him in one push, making him disappear from their eyes. The monster doesn't stop there and it starts shaking the SUV, due to which Chanda falls on her head and gets knocked out. While she lays silently on the hood of the car, Kaylee snuggles in Jonah's arm as the sun sets. Later, she wakes up in the night and calls for Chanda. Upon her voice, Chanda gets up groggily and climbs to the roof, where she finds an inflatable raft. Following Kaylee's instructions, Chanda gets the raft ready and both of them help Jonah get up and climb into the car. Chanda also climbs in, but just as Kaylee halfway inside, the ground shudders violently. The shockwave causes Kaylee to fall back into the raft, and just in the exact moment, a gigantic luminescent tentacle flares up from the sand and causes everyone to lose their minds in terror. The monster tries to attack Kaylee, but she dodges it and climbs on the roof of the car. At the back, she tries to take off the gasoline cans, but the monster lashes one out of her reach. Therefore, she uses the next one to spread the fuel everywhere, and as the beast lunges at her again with the tentacle, Kaylee flares up a matchstick and lights up the whole thing on fire. The monster swirls 360 due to the fire. Meanwhile, Kaylee jumps back in the car and heaves in exhaustion. As the situation calms down a little bit, the next tragedy awaits them and Jonah gives up on life. As he takes his last breath, both Kaylee and Chanda burst into tears and cling on to each other for their dear lives. The following morning, a surfer comes to their side and wakes them up. Upon seeing another alive person next to them, the girls regain their senses and Kaylee slowly steps in the sand. Upon finding it completely safe, she lends a hand to Chanda and both of them silently walk away from the beach in silence. And with that, the movie concludes. Thanks for watching, guys.